Sharing your passion starts with taking that first step. Take Will, for example. His first step was taking free TV classes at CCX Create. He's learning production skills and now has access to cutting-edge equipment. He's working on local music productions, meeting new people, and gaining the experience needed to produce his own show. Best of all, he's sharing his passion for music with others in the community. Share your passion. Visit ccxmedia.org.
Hello and welcome to BookBeat. My name is Suellen Zagrabelny. I'll be your host today. Our guest is Marilyn Mcgriff, author of Caught in the Lie. Marilyn, welcome.
Thank you.
Just for our audience's edification, Marilyn and I have known each other many years. I won't say quite how many decades, but we have reconnected after a number of years and got back in touch when I found out that she had written this book. So welcome, Marilyn. Tell us a little bit about Caught in the Lie, as long as you don't give away the secret.
Oh, yeah, so I would never do that. Okay, so it's what I call a local history mystery. Being a local historian, from primarily from Isanti County, hour or so north of the Twin Cities. I have done a lot of investigative work, let's say. And it's all been nonfiction, but along the way, of course, I gathered a number of stories from various people from various parts of the area, and I sort of kept logging those a little bit and thinking, you know, I think there might be an opportunity to bring these stories together into a fiction account. And so the Caught in the Lie is, well, you can maybe tell, focuses on something that is caught in the lie, and that would be lutefisk. And so it really focuses on a fish company in Isanti County that processes lutefisk.
Let's stop for a second and tell our audience, if they don't know, what lutefisk is.
Okay. Well, it starts out with dried cod that, you know, the cod comes in from Norway in big, I suppose you'd call them fillets, big chunks at any rate, and it's very hard and stiff. And so it is put then into a tank, in this case they're just stock tanks, in a lye solution, and which is sodium hydroxide, and the lye plumps up these cod pieces so that they begin to look more and more like fresh fish. And then they are rinsed and then sold to be either boiled or baked and served as a traditional Scandinavian delicacy, I'm told.
Yes, I think lutefisk is an excuse to eat cream gravy and drawn butter, boiled potatoes, and meatballs.
Well, that's kind of my feeling too. But because I grew up just a mile and a half from this fish company, and having been to the fish company on a number of occasions for research, and also once in a while to buy pickled herring, because lutefisk was not going to be on my menu. I was well aware of sort of the lore about this fish company. And I just thought, you know, it just sort of screams novel. And so in thinking about writing a novel, then I thought, okay, so, well, you can't just write about the fish company. Something has to happen there. And I hit on the idea that, okay, a murder must have happened there. And logically, then, it must be that one of the workers there ended up in one of these vats of lye. And you would not do that voluntarily. And so then the idea is that then the person was either pushed into this lye bath, or perhaps was, not doing so well before he went into that fish bath, like as in dead. And then, of course, that's the murder, and then this murder has to get solved. And so that's what the book really revolves about, is the solving of this murder. And there's a new, like a rookie sheriff's deputy who has just come to the county, and he then is assigned to investigate this case.
And what I've seen in the book, the secondary characters are really important. Could you talk about how about your character development?
Okay. Well, I thought this so the rookie sheriff's investigator, I suppose, is really a main character.
Okay.
And then another main character, as the story develops, is the young woman undertaker who was called in to take care of this body at the fish company. But throughout the book, then, there are several characters, and I mean that not just in the sense of characters, in the novel, but they're drawn from real characters in the area, and all names, of course, have been changed, but
to protect the innocent.
Yes, but the stories are real, and the place names are real.
Okay.
And so, and the stories take place in maybe a different time frame, a different context, but the happenings are generally real. But I do keep reminding readers that it is fiction. Mm-hmm. And so we have as secondary characters other members of the sheriff's department. We have people in the community who are being interviewed either as possible suspects or just for more information in this investigation that goes on. And then there are some secondary characters also, who work at the funeral home, and there are just some of the general, farmers in the area and that sort of thing. And so, yeah,
they give the flavor
right
of the place.
Yes.
And what I noticed, knowing Isanti County, knowing the area, made it familiar, made the story something that I could latch onto, and I think other readers will find that the sense of place is really strong. You've talked a little bit about where you find your I'll say that again. You talked a little bit about where you found your inspiration. Can you talk a little further about that?
Okay. Well, yes, for a number of years, for like 15 years, I think, I actually wrote an annual tourism and a more history-related newspaper for the area there. It was called the Isanti County Traveler. And in getting stories for that publication, then I would go out and about and talk to people, and one thing would lead to another. I might be at the coffee shop and somebody'd say, oh, just in conversation they might talk about so-and-so out there. Oh, did you hear what so-and-so did now? Or do you remember so-and-so? And then that would go on to, I'd ask more questions. Okay, so tell me more about this person, this character. And so that was a lot of what that Isanti County Traveler was about. And of course, in doing that, then I also found other stories that I never published, but I kind of put in the back of my mind for future reference.
Mm-hmm. That seems like a fun way to gather information, to be able to talk to people directly, rather than sitting in a library doing research.
Yes, and of course this was then quite a departure from the other, nonfiction things that I had done. Mm-hmm. And so, and so then to sit there and have everything come out of my imagination, with a little background from some of these actual stories, mm-hmm. but to develop this is really quite different from, like you say, going to a library or going on the internet and finding out statistics or data kinds of things. And so that was a challenge, and I think I needed to prove to myself that I could do it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you think there's another novel in you?
No.
Oh, really? Do you think you'll go back to writing nonfiction then? Or?
No.
So you think this is a one-hit wonder?
Yes. Yeah, a number of people have asked me, well, isn't there going to be a sequel? And I said, if you want to write the sequel, you go right ahead. But I kind of figured this was my one-shot deal. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
and
really?
I can't say I won't do more writing, but not on of book length things. I think maybe more articles or But so I think at some point one has to retire.
I don't know. I found a new vocation, or avocation, I should say, and at 62, I guess I was. So maybe you found an avocation. Maybe the bug has bitten you.
Well, I'm still waiting.
Okay. Okay. What else? I'm just trying to think. We kind of have covered the waterfront on Caught in a Lie. Is there anything else you'd like to add about Caught in a Lie? And then I think what we'll do is go take a little break and bring up the other things that you've written.
Well, it's really kind of, it is quite a kick to talk to people who have read the book and they can identify with so much in the book. And this, of course, is primarily people that have a background in Isanti County area. And I think it just shows, I was hesitant at first to use real place names because mm-hmm. I thought maybe that might make people associated with those place names uncomfortable or something. But then as I started reading other novels and other mysteries, and I think particularly of John Sanford's mm-hmm. The Virgil Flowers detective stories, where he does use real places, and as you're reading, you can really, can almost pinpoint mm-hmm. right where this is taking place, and like you could almost go there. He tends to, I think, use enough differences so that it's not exact, mm-hmm. And because he's dealing with some kind of dicey topics, and I suppose one could say that have a murder there at the fish company, which is a real fish company. And as far as I know, there was never any murder there. But I did check with the fellows that still own that fish company and said, you know, I'm including a fish company in a novel, and actually a murder happens there. And I said, you know, do you have any problems with that? Oh no, they said. They just assumed it would be good publicity.
Yes.
And
yes.
so, and also with a couple other places that are real. Well, I mean, they're all the places in there are real, but I did check with one of a restaurant that I talk about, the Dusty Eagle, which people think, who aren't familiar with it, think it's a made-up name, but it's the real name.
The Dusty Eagle.
Yes, and so of course, I mean, the owner there was delighted because, again, you know, it may become a destination.
Exactly.
And interesting, the Day Fish Company is also a destination. It has been for as long as they've been in business, since I think the late 60s. And for whatever reason, this is part of the, well, I think part of the reason why I felt I really had to write about this, because, I mean, the idea of people driving, even from Wisconsin and from miles around, to go to this place to pick up their lutefisk, when they provide, the company provides lutefisk for many of the stores in, you know, probably, well, outstate Minnesota. And so
pretty much throughout the region, as I would imagine.
And so there's no reason to go there. It's no cheaper to buy it there, but it's for the so-called experience. And of course, the experience, which comes out loud and clear in the book, is an olfactory experience.
Yes.
And so, I mean, and that's just classic. And so a lot of the stories in the book revolve around that whole idea. You know, the woman who goes to buy fish at the fish company in her fur coat, and, you know, and the smell just penetrates the,
yes,
you know, and that sort of thing. So, so I think, you know, people resonating with the story, even though of course it's fiction, but resonating because of the place names and because of the, you know, the real fish company. I've been amazed when I've done book talks, and in places that are fairly far, you know, not real close to the fish company, and I'll say how many people have gone to the fish company, and I mean, I'm amazed at how many people raise their hands, because it really is. And I say, having lived close to, you know, within 1.5 miles from the place, that every fall there would be a noticeable increase in traffic going by, because, and I use the term that because people were on their pilgrimage to the fish company.
Yes. I think sometimes when you write fiction, you can tell more truth than you can with fact. And that's the feeling I got with this book, that you were able to characterize the people in the book more sharply.
Well, I hope that's true.
I think it's true.
Yeah,
I definitely think it's true.
And also, yes, it did give me an opportunity to make some commentary about, you know, sort of the decline of the, you know, farming community in that area, and you know, some other little social criticisms that I probably couldn't do in a nonfiction, you know, genre.
Let me see. Before we take a short pause to bring up the other material, is there anything else you'd like to add about Caught in a Lie?
Well, just that you know, people do ask me questions, you know, and they want to know, is is this this particular story true? Or, of course, they want to know about one character in the book whose name happens to be Madeline Moriarty. And that, for some reason, they think that that's a little similar to Marilyn Mcgriff. And in the book, this Madeline Moriarty is a local historian.
Oh.
And she's the resource person for this young investigator who just moved to the area, and he knows nothing about the area. He knows nothing about Lutefisk. So she's becomes his kind of go-to person.
Okay.
And so she's able to enlighten him about quite a few things in the community and about Lutefisk. And so people do wonder if I've written myself into the book. But all I can say is it is fiction.
Mm-hmm. And if you appear, let's take a short break right now, and we'll come back and look at some of the nonfiction materials that Marilyn has written. We'll join you in a moment. Welcome back to Book Beat. Our guest, Marilyn Mcgriff, is a local historian, and she spent quite a bit of time writing about Isanti County and its environs. Marilyn, welcome back. Could you tell us about this book that we have in front of us?
Okay, it's called Isanti County, Yesterday, Today, Tomorrow, and it was a commemorative book written for the 150th anniversary of Isanti County, which occurred in 2007.
Okay.
And so I was commissioned to write the book, and having written like the first book ever that really was a history of Isanti County back in 1985. And so this was more pictures, a little bit more of what would call a coffee table book kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that was in 2007, and then so that was I was drawing on that first book I wrote, but also drawing on a lot of other articles and things about the county that I had written.
Our guest, Marilyn Mcgriff, has joined us on Book Beat today, and she is a local historian who has written a book called Caught in the Lie as a fiction book, but now we're going to look at some of her nonfiction work. And Marilyn, if you'd take us on to the next piece that you have written.
Okay, from 1986 to 2000, for 15 years, in other words, I published a local history newspaper annually, and it was called Isanti County Traveler. And after I'd done that for 10 years, I put a collection of the articles from the travelers into this book, which I called Isanti County Collage.
Okay, and what kinds of things were in those articles? You've got a couple copies that you can, if you flip them around toward the camera.
So again, it was a matter of going out and talking to people, and also finding things in the archives. And so one story I found was, I called the article Swedish Movers and Shakers. And it's about some Swedish immigrants who first went to a Shaker colony in Kentucky. And the there was two couples, and the men in these two families didn't like it there. And so they came and settled in Isanti County, leaving their wives behind. The men brought the children with them.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. And so it was just a very interesting story. And the two women actually were some of the last people in this Shaker colony. Because, of course, one of the things about the Shakers is that they did not procreate. And so all new members to their colony had to be done through proselytizing. And so anyway, so I just thought that was a very, very interesting story. Also in that same issue was an article about the only governor from Isanti County, only person from Isanti County who became a governor. And he went on about the turn of the century, 1900, and he went on to be a lumber baron in the state of Washington and figured in something that is now referred to as the Everett Massacre, labor management dispute out there. So that's the kinds of articles. And then in my final issue in 2000, I featured Barnes of Isanti County and called it Barnes Ennobled. And so just a lot of pictures of Barnes and stories about Barnes. And it's interesting now to look at this.
Leave it open for a while, so Scott can get a few more pictures.
So it's interesting now because as I look through this newspaper, a lot of the barns that I wrote about are no longer standing.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah. So again, it's part of that passing of the farm era in that region. Okay. So that kind of gives you an idea of some of the kinds of articles. Might be about people. It might be about various topics, like a lot about Swedish immigration to the area. When churches would have an anniversary, I would usually try to feature them. And so it was kind of a human interest, again, with the whole idea of bringing history to light and to life.
Welcome back to BookBeat. Our guest today is Marilyn Mcgriff, author of Caught in the Lie, a mystery novel. She is a local historian who has written a number of books about local history in Isanti County. And she is going to talk now about an article she wrote in Minnesota History. What can you tell us about that?
Okay. Again, by just talking to people in the coffee shops and that sort of thing. And also I should mention that for a number of years I was director of the Isanti County Historical Society during the 80s. And it was during that time that a fellow walked into my office one day with a bunch of photographs, and he said, "You know, my great-grandfather had a sugar plantation in Cuba." I said, "Yeah, right." Well, he showed me the pictures, and I realized that he was telling the truth. And then, moving to the coffee shops, then I started talking about that. I said, "You know, have you ever heard about this bunch of Swedes from here going to Cuba?" And one fellow said, "Well, yeah, you know, out west of town here, there's a fellow we call Cube Olson, who actually had lived in Cuba for a while." And so then I started really investigating this story and found out that indeed there was a Swedish settlement, Swedish-American settlement in the eastern part of Cuba from about 1906 or 7 to right around 1920.
Oh, really?
Yes, and a number of people were from the Isanti County area. And so for Minnesota History Magazine then, way back in 1999, I wrote an article that's called Minnesota Swedes Raising Cain. And it talks about the people who went there, why they went there, what happened to them when they went down. This was shortly after the Spanish-American War. And so there was land available that had been bought by a doctor from Minneapolis, actually. He bought a large tract of land, and then he decided that it would be really a good idea for these hardworking Swedes from Minnesota who had to put up with winter and lots of hard work, and to go to Cuba where they could grow crops all year round, and you know, good climate, and so, and of course he wanted to recoup his investment. So that story, even though it was published in 1999, kind of keeps on going, because people hear about it and they realize, oh, my great-grandfather was a part of that.
Oh, really?
Yes, and so it's one of those stories that I can't quite get away from. Mm-hmm. And now in the fall of 2017, the people in that area of Cuba, there aren't any, or if there may be one or two Swedish people, descendants of Swedish people still living there, but they're so fascinated with the idea that these Swedes settled down there that they're actually going to have a little celebration for the 110th anniversary of these of the Swedish people coming to that area. Mm-hmm. And so I'm hoping to get a group together of some of these descendants to have a tour to that area.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Oh, how cool.
Yeah, so it's just, you know, it just keeps taking on a life of its own.
Mm-hmm. So you're not exactly retired. You've got a few irons in the fire.
Well, yes. So this is certainly one of them, and then while I was still living in Isanti County, I started getting involved with Scandinavian music and dance here in the Twin Cities. Mm-hmm. And so actually last summer I moved into the Twin Cities, and so I continue to explore those possibilities, particularly with the Swedish folk instrument, the nyckelharpa.
Mm-hmm. Oh, how fun! So you have taken up the nyckelharpa, and are honing your skills on,
yes.
on that instrument.
Yes.
Well, you have certainly had a varied writing career. It sounds so fascinating to hear about your nonfiction writing as well as your fiction writing. And I hope you're wrong about having no more novels in you. I hope you get bitten by the bug when you're 95.
Oh dear.
Is there anything you'd like to add before we close for today?
Well, I just think that local history is such an important facet of the whole historical picture. Oftentimes I think local historians are, I don't want to say poo-pooed, but maybe that's an accurate term.
Undervalued?
Undervalued, yes, because they're the people that are out there, you know, on the ground, so to speak, and interviewing people, finding things that haven't been oftentimes finding things that haven't been well researched before, things that for certain have not appeared in history books, that is, textbooks and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And so I just think that you know, I feel very strongly about this whole idea, and you mentioned it too, about sense of place, for knowing, you know, wherever you are and wherever you land, what happened here? How was it, you know, how did the things that happened here shape this place? And, you know, who were the people of, you know, men, women, children, you know, all kinds of people who helped to shape this place. And I think we've really lost a lot of that in our contemporary society. And so, you know, if local historians can bring some of that to light, I think that's, you know, all to the good. I mean, I grew up in Isanti County and left when I graduated from high school and said, kind of, you know, I'm never coming back here. But in coming back and then getting involved in local history, it was sort of a, you know, I mean, I was a little arrogant, I suppose, at the time, and said, well, you know, local history, I mean, I know everything that went on here, you know, what's to even investigate? And of course, I found out that there was a lot to investigate, and still is. And so, you know, I think that that's a real challenge for people wherever they are to look for those stories and find the stories that have already been written. And then to get a better understanding of the place where they're living.
That's fascinating. I thank you so much for taking the time to spend with us today and to share your work. The book is Caught in the Lie. The author is Marilyn Mcgriff. This is BookBeat, and we hope we'll see you next time. BookBeat next travels to the Maple Grove Library to learn about mysteries in its collection. Welcome back to BookBeat. Today we are going to place a special emphasis on mysteries, and our guests, Allison and Kay, are going to talk about some of the mysteries that are in the Maple Grove Library collection. Who'd like to start?
Well, to talk generally about mysteries in Hennepin County. You'd asked about how many mysteries we've recently gotten, and in the last 60 days, Hennepin County's purchased over 200 new mystery titles. Some of the new ones are popular authors that you know, such as Camilla Lackberg, J.A. Jones, J.D. Robb, Ann Perry. Robert Parker is still writing, even though he's passed away. An author named Akins is writing new books under his name. Patterson, of course, has several out. James Patterson, and so we've got quite a selection. Those are things that, if you want to read the most recent book by that author, you're probably going to go on a reserve list. But people who are still catching up or just getting into an author would easily be able to get copies of their earlier work. And you know, and those are just some of the main ones. We can go into more depth on some of those if you'd like.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna let Allison. She's got a couple she wanted to talk about.
I do. I'm going to start with P.J. Tracy, which is a very popular mystery author. I see that author all the time. I'm going to talk about The Sixth Idea, which is new from this fall. It actually takes place in Minneapolis.
Oh, fun.
Which I thought people might like. It's about a seemingly random trail of murder and crime, which takes place during the Christmas season. But two homicide detectives believe that the crimes are linked. And the detectives dig 60 years into the past to try to solve it. And they might even have to prevent Armageddon as well.
Okay. That sounds like fun. What else do you have?
Sure, let's see. I have, Sex, Lies, and Serious Money by Stuart Woods. He's another really popular author. This is about Stone Barrington, which is an investigator that Stuart Woods writes about. And the investigator picks up a new wealthy client, but the client confesses just how exactly he made his money, which is less than good.
Okay.
And Barrington finds himself in a tough spot with pursuers closing in from all sides. And Barrington quickly learns that easy money isn't always so easy.
Any more?
Downfall by J.A. Jance, which is Joanna Bradley, is the female investigator of that series. And she returns pregnant to solve a very confusing case, which is two women have fallen to their deaths from a small nearby peak. But was it murder, Was one woman murdered and the other suicide? Or were both murdered? Or was no one murdered? And is the perpetrator still out there? It's very mysterious. That one.
Oh my goodness.
And then Kay has a few too.
Yep. Can you
Of course.
We're sharing notes. One of the ones I want to make sure I talk about is the Lost Boy by Camilla Lackberg. She's one of the Scandinavian authors that people have picked up since Girl with the Dragon Tattoo created such interest in Scandinavian writing. This one follows the Swedish detective Patrick Hedström and his wife Erica, who always seems to get involved in his cases. This time they're looking for some information about a man named Severin who everybody liked but nobody really knew. And it comes out pretty quickly that there are a lot of secrets in his past that would not. This is one of the series that I would recommend if you want to start reading Camilla Lackberg. You might want to go back to her first novel. Do I remember the name right now? I'm sorry, no, I don't. But
I can look it up
yes,
and get a...
library staff can help with that as well. Because they do have a strong backstory. So there's a lot of Erica and Peter first getting together, and the Ice Princess, I think, is the name of the first one.
Okay.
And the other one that is not exactly a mystery, and I know maybe we'll talk a little more about what's a mystery, what's not a mystery, is called The Woman in Cabin 10 by Ruth Ware. And this one is one that's in our fiction section, but it's a very strong suspense element, and there's a woman who's trying to figure out what's going on. It's got a lot of qualities in common with Girl on the Train.
Okay.
And so that's really popping up as something that people are interested in reading. And if I was going to talk about one more, it would be Louise Penny. Her newest Three Pines mystery is called A Great Reckoning. And in this one, Chief Inspector Gamache, who has been retired, is given an old map and as a gift for his first day on a new job. But a copy of it's discovered alongside of a murdered professor, and now the inspector finds himself under investigation.
Oh my goodness.
So, and again, that's a series with a strong backstory, and it's the Three Pines Mysteries by Louise Penny.
Okay. So we've got a variety of books by established authors. Do you get authors with regional reputation?
We certainly do,
Yes.
and let's see, there's a couple of those. I've got three of them here on the table. We've got Jesse Chandler, David Housewright, and Larry Millett. Larry Millet's the one perhaps that I enjoy the most. He's got a fair amount of humor in his books, and he's written a whole series of Sherlock Holmes in Minnesota stories. And so they're quite fun because they'll have a lot. There's one where he's involved with the railroad barons, J.J. Hill and such. And this one that's on display here is the Runestone Mystery. So they're great fun for Minnesotans. David Housewright's written quite a few, and there are on our backside we've got a few other Minnesota authors that I didn't have copies of books. Did you want to just run through what those are? It's in the middle where they're spread out. We've got
after Jesse Chandler, Barbara Dees and Colin T. Nelson, which Hennepin County Public Defender turned author. That sounds interesting. And not sure how to pronounce it, but Lynn Miller LaCourcier.
LaCourcier,
Yeah. Oh, I said it right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
And Roger
Stelius.
Stelius. Okay.
Yeah, he's a relative who's on staff at Hennepin County.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Oh,
that's right.
exciting.
Oh, sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
And LaCourcier is actually very local. She's from this area, if I recall correctly. Yep. So we've got those, and then Allison and I also, when we were talking, we were like, okay, there's some classic authors we've got to make sure we push. And
for sure.
If you haven't read all the classics, We both picked out a few
Okay.
to talk about.
Have at 'em.
That's a really good place to start. Agatha Christie would be probably my favorite. The one that we have out here, Murder on the Orient Express, was my favorite one. It's very, very traditional, you know, the formulaic mystery with the investigator, and a lot of red herrings where you're not sure. But I really liked her writing style. And then, of course, the Arthur Conan Doyle's Sherlock Holmes, 'cause there's so many to choose from.
Yes.
And I really enjoy how he never ever believes in the supernatural and always thinks that there is a logical explanation, and he's always right, because there always is. And those are two very famous, very popular authors in the genre.
What about you?
Well, I picked out a couple. One I've got here is by Georgette Heyer. Georgette Heyer was known as the queen of British romance, but she also wrote quite a few mysteries.
Oh, really?
And they tend to be the English country house setting. They're not necessarily a series, so that's always nice because you can pick one up anywhere you want to and just plunge right in. And so they're set in the like 30s, 40s in England. Really fun. And then I also picked Dorothy Sayers, again, another famous dead author. This one happens to be The Nine Tailors. Her detective, Lord Peter Wimsey,
Yes.
is he's so fun. And eventually, after he saves his wife from his eventual wife from the gallows, she becomes his partner in crime solving. And she's an author whose series were so popular that other people have taken up on them. Like I mentioned, Parker and Atkins, and Jill Patton Walsh has written several additional mysteries featuring Wimsey and his wife. And then the last one that I got out here, my mother-in-law just has started and just adored, which is the #1 Ladies Detective Agency by Alexander McCall Smith. They are set in Botswana. And the detective, the founder of the #1 Ladies Detective Agency is Maura Motswe, and her assistant Mama Kutsi helps her. They have their little office in the back of her husband, Mr. J.L.B. Matacone's garage, and they're what you might call cozy mysteries in that they don't feature lots of gore and violence. And yet you learn a little bit about Botswana, you get a few laughs, and just are very fun. And again, that's a series. This is the first of more than a dozen titles.
That was one of the books I chose for a book group I was in when I lived in Illinois. And the person that did the treats brought the red bush tea and forget what the treat was that she got that was similar to what is talked about in the books.
Okay. And you mentioned your book club, so I think it's a good time to just point out that the Maple Grove Friends of the Library have a mystery book club, which meets on the 4th Monday of every month. Not December, though. December, everybody's busy.
Right.
And the books for 2017 will be announced pretty soon. So that's open to new members. So.
Oh, that's terrific.
Yep. They have 2 other book clubs, too, for people who want to focus on something other than mysteries.
Yes, I filmed the mystery book club.
Oh, right.
Several years ago now.
Yep.
But it was a fun discussion.
Yep. They're still going strong.
Oh, that's great. You mentioned suspense and some other things. What is there a distinction between mysteries and other kinds of suspense, thrillers, horror?
Yeah.
Any
Yeah.
opinions?
Yes. Yeah.
Any opinions?
Yeah.
There's a definite line there. I would say a lot of books have mystery elements. I know we talked about The Woman in Cabin 10. That's labeled as fiction. So I would say that a traditional mystery, at least how we categorize them, it's about an investigator or an amateur sleuth who is trying to solve a mystery, usually a murder. But like if it were to be set in like a mythological world or like out of this world in some way, it would be categorized as science fiction, probably.
Okay.
I mean, it's
Right. And there's a lot of crossover. Some
Yeah.
authors, it's really, James Patterson is someone that people probably recognize. They're going to find some of his books in mystery. They're going to find some of his books in the regular fiction collection because they're more suspense, psychological kind of thrillers. Girl with a Dragon Tattoo is classified as fiction. Because although there are murders and although they're trying to solve something, that's not the main point of the plot.
right.
And the nice thing is, if you're coming to the library to get it, no matter how we've classed it, the catalog will tell you if it's going to be in the regular fiction or if it's going to be in the mysteries
Right.
or in the science fiction. You know, there's romantic mysteries too, so that kind of comes there. And then there's paranormal romantic mysteries.
Right.
Yes.
It crosses all genres.
It is. There's
Okay.
a lot of genre crossing that happens. It's become a more popular thing, I think. And now we see too that things that were originally published as regular print books are coming out as graphic novels. So it's another thing to keep your eye on. That they might be in that graphic novel section with more pictures, more like a extended version.
It's a big
comic
comic
book.
book.
It's like a big comic book, exactly.
That's right. I would like to put you both on the spot for a minute because we haven't talked about how the library is categorized. How is it Library of Congress? Is it what's the
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. We use the Library of Congress cataloging system, which uses 2 letters and a series of numbers to class the books by their subject. And that's for the nonfiction or the fact books. And library staff is always happy to help you find that book. When you look at it and you say, I have no idea what GV 953.M75ZX means. we're happy to help you locate that in the stacks. And then in the fiction, Allison mentioned earlier, I'll let her talk about that again too.
Yeah, we have all those subgenres of fiction. So it starts with regular fiction, alphabetical by author's last name. And then we have mystery, romance, science fiction, and graphic. And they all follow each other all the way. But we also have large print, and they all follow each other all the way. But we also have large print. That's in a different area. But
And westerns.
and westerns.
Oh,
Of
yes.
course. How could I forget?
Yeah, and children's materials and teen materials, we have materials on all those subjects, except for the youngest children, 2nd grade readers and younger, those are shelved in the low bins. But above 2nd grade reading level, nonfiction books are interfiled with the adult nonfiction. So for example, if you're looking for something on the Minnesota Vikings, you're going to find the kids' books and the adult books next to each other on the shelf. And there's a very small teen nonfiction section that focuses specifically for teens. The genres within children's and fiction and teen and easy, although easies are pretty much all just easies, but
Right.
they're all interfiled. But
Yes.
we can look at subject headings and help people pull out if they're looking for like a mystery for their children to read. And we should mention too,
Yes.
we've got
Lists.
we've got lists. We have great lists. I was going to say too, we also have the audiobooks, and we mentioned earlier. So all of those genres, there are books available on audio, and then downloadable as well. And again, staff's always free to help. We're always available to help. And Allison was just saying.
Oh, the lists we have available on our website, separated by genre. We do have a few by fiction as well, but you can look for suggestions if you have a specific genre you're interested in.
Oh.
You can see it's separated by all different subgenres, like mystery. If you were interested in mystery, they have like cozy mysteries, historical mysteries,
Amateur sleuths.
Yeah,
That's another one.
all kinds of them, and then they list several titles that
Oh,
you can
that's-
look into.
Including Minnesota. Minnesota
Yes,
was another.
Minnesota was-
settings was another choice.
Yep, yep. There's lots in there.
Is there anything else you'd like to add? What haven't we covered? Because we've kind of hit the gamut.
Well, one other thing that we talked about when we were preparing for this was that a lot of the people on the Maple Grove staff read mysteries.
Oh, yes.
And we love doing readers advisory.
We
It's one of the
do.
most fun parts of the job. So we're always happy to recommend something that that a reader might be interested in. It's always helpful. I think we see this a lot with kids, where we'll say, well, what did you read most recently that you liked?
Yep.
Works for adults too, because then that gives us some idea. I did think about the fact that in terms of our local and our classic things that we picked, Allison and I both kind of steered away from the more graphic or violent novels. They are out there.
They are.
Some things that are extra suspenseful. Elizabeth George came to my mind.
Sure.
There are some others that people like. And
Dan Brown.
Dan Brown,
yeah.
yep. And different people on the staff read different things, and we're always looking for ways to push things. In fact, you might notice we've started publicizing popular things from our fiction collection on the checkout stands now and the catalog stands, so that there's some books to check out right there, handy for people to just grab.
Yeah,
We just started doing that a couple days ago, and I noticed that yesterday things had disappeared. So
Wonderful.
Nice.
So people are taking advantage of what is offered at the library. And I will say to our viewers, the hallmark of an enlightened society is people who read. And these ladies who have helped us today get a picture of this wonderful resource that we have in our community. I hope you will avail yourself of the Maple Grove Library or the library in your local community. Anything else for the good of the order?
I just should point out we're open 7 days a week.
Yes.
Except for major holidays like Christmas, Thanksgiving, and 4th of July, we are open. And so we're open 9 to 9, Monday through Thursday, 9 to 5, Friday and Saturday, 12 to 5 on Sundays. And always happy to see you. We've got plenty of free parking.
Yes. Yes. We have that ramp.
Yes, and it is a wonderful place for people to come, bring their children, spend a few hours or a few minutes looking for a book or just perusing the stacks. I thank you both, Allison and Kay, for joining me today on Book Beat. We look forward to seeing you another time. Thank you.
Volunteering is more than just a word. It's a window to opportunities. Take Mark, for example. By taking free TV classes at CCX Create, Mark is helping bring entertainment and information to his community, along with building a foundation of skills that will take him one step closer to his dreams. Share your passion. Visit ccxmedia.org.